What we wanted to do was create an incredibly fun and engaging version of the Ninja Turtles.
I love me some Ninja Turtles, as much as the next guy, but I've been struggling to find the right inspiration to make something based on them.
What if it's animated by teenagers?
Can I kick it?
The doodles that you do in the size of your notebook were taken.
An art style that looks like the dodgy sketches of an underachiever who's bored at school. It's as if it was made for me. Hello and welcome back to the ooze-filled drainage system that is my hobby hole. And if you're a returning viewer, you may notice that the workbench has had a bit of a glow up. What do you think of my riz? Am I back on my drip? That's right, I know what the kids are saying. And what better way to channel that inner teenager than starting today's build by making a skateboard. So we've got some balsa wood here that's cut to the shape of a board, and we're going to soak it for a little while in some good old H2O. And it's not just for the purpose of keeping it well hydrated. When balsa wood gets wet, it also gets more malleable, which means we can bend it to our will and make those kick lip bendy end bit things.
What?
And once that's dried out, we'll add some cut to shape sandpaper, which makes for some pretty convincing grip tape. And after we've cut the ouchy bits off, these pinheads can double up as screw heads. Then I'll add on some axles I've made out of clay, as well as a very important part of any skateboard, the wheels. And at this point, the skateboard's looking pretty good. So let's move on and make the skater boy, skater turtle,
Turtle.
himself. Mikey's going to start his life the way all my models do, with a skeleton made of armature wire, and I've scaled it appropriately, some may say, to fit the size of the skateboard we just made. If you're looking for technical terms, it's 1 to the skateboard I made scale. So we'll start bending Mikey's metal bones into the pose we want. And normally when we're happy with the pose, we'd start bulking out his body with tinfoil. But just for giggles, this time I thought we'd try something different and use some milliput, which is a 2-part air drying putty, which I'd seen the amazing Bryce Savina use on his channel before. But I must have done something wrong because it didn't go exactly to plan. I'll tell you more about that later. For now, we'll start bulking up Mikey's limbs with my clay of choice, Super Sculpey Medium. This is not a sponsored video. I wish. But once we've got the legs and torso done, before we start the arms, we'll work on all the detailing that will go behind those arms. And I've done some research here, so Mikey's chest bit, which on a turtle is called a plastron, will go on and we'll start marking out the quadrants. Then this bit of tinfoil will be the base for his main shell section, otherwise known as the carapace. And these side bits are called the inframarginal scoots. I look forward to hearing from you herpetologists and coloniologists about my mispronunciation in the comments. Anyway, with all that out of the way, we can start building up his chunky knee pads made of cloth, or in this case, rolled out clay, and then we can start adding sections to the back of his shell. And because I plastered on too much liquid Sculpey, I was having trouble keeping them in place. But we'll battle on and try to shape the sections with a hobby knife. Once the parts of the shell are all in place, we can start to add some detailing, including some sick battle scars. Then we'll move on to his belt, which is going to need some texture. At the moment, my go-to texture device is the grip on this sculpture tool. And once I've rolled that on with mathematical precision, I'll follow that up by really cack-handedly trying to slip that belt around his waist. Then Mikey will receive this little metal loop to hold it all in. And as the camera goes in and out of focus, we'll make his trademark buckle with the giant M emblazoned on it. So we'll get that baked and glued into place. And the Ninja Turtle's feet and hands make me very happy. Don't look into that too much. Why? Well, because they only have 2 and 3 digits respectively, which means less sculpting work to do. Next up, we'll move on to making the arms. And it's at this point that I realized I made a major mistake. As you'll have seen in the thumbnail, I wanted to have it look like Mikey was flying through the air on his skateboard, with his arm sliding along the wall of the sewer tunnel. A normal armature wire would not hold his weight. So I had to chop off his left arm and instead fit the trusty coat hanger. And if you want to know why coat hangers are so awesome, check out my last episode. Oh, and segue, that mistake reminds me of the one I mentioned earlier. the milliput must expand when put in the oven because once I baked everything and pulled it out of the oven, there was cracks throughout the whole thing. So off camera I had to go back and fill in all the cracks and sand them down. So I'm guessing the milliput expanded under the Super Sculpey, which is what made it crack. Anyway, just a heads up if you're going to try it yourself. Right, back to the build. So we've glued the skateboard to Mikey, which will make it easier to sculpt with his right hand that is gripping onto the board. Once that's good, we can start detailing some fingernails, as well as knuckle creases. Then we'll put on the last of his bandages, and lastly, well, when it comes to the sculpting part at least, we'll make Mikey's head. We'll start by carving a big grin into this melon-shaped bit of clay. Then we'll bulk out his nose a little bit, before pushing in these two little recesses which will become his eye sockets. We'll make his cheeks a little bit more rounded and cute, and then give him some eyeballs. We'll then roll out two tiny long bits of clay, which will press onto his head, becoming the edges of his mask. The back of his mask will get some creases for where the knot's gonna go, and then we'll put on said knot, which kinda looks like a French croissant. Or maybe that's just me, I'm just always thinking about baked goods. Finally, Mikey will get his tongue, and we'll mark out where his teeth are gonna go. And whilst his head's baking in the oven, we'll attach his coat hanger arm to this block of wood, which later will get covered up by the base. Mikey will then get a neck in the form of more armature wire, and then once his head's out of the oven, we can stick it on top. And what would you call these long bits coming off of his mask? Tassels? Ties? I don't know. Anyway, he'll get some of them. And then finally, we'll glue on his nunchucks. And that's the sculpting done. Next, the painting. Let's have a montage. Yeah, decent montage. I'd give it 7 coat hangers out of 10. Let's make the base. We'll start by cutting this XPS foam into strips. We'll then slap on some PVA glue along the edge of each of them, and then the other edge will get a strip of air dry clay. Then you push them all together, and you get a curved wall. Then we'll start marking out a brick pattern, and then to give it some texture, we'll go to town on it with this tinfoil ball. We can then slap on some brown paint, before immediately covering all that good paint job over with wall filler, and make it worse by wiping off the excess with some tissue paper. Off camera, I'll repaint the brown, and then we can add some details on, like these white squiggles, to give it that sketchy notebook effect that we're going for. I've also made this drainage pipe out of polymer clay, which will paint the same way, and then wedge it into that hole in the wall. The base of the base will get a bit of weathering, And then we'll put it all together. We'll fill out the back with some more XPS foam blocks. And then it's cement mixing time. Except it's not real cement. We'll mix up some wool filler powder with black acrylic paint and PVA glue to make a paste we can liberally slap on to the base. And with that all dry and sanded, we'll then get to work on the ooze. For this I've masked off the edges so nothing will ooze. Get it? Ooze? See what I did there? Ugh, I think I just made myself vomit in my mouth a bit. Let's just hope it doesn't ooze out. We got 'em! So we'll add together this 2-part resin, then squeeze in a couple drops of this fluorescent green dye. Then we'll just give that a good mix. But I think it's looking too yellowy green, so let's add a bit of this darker green dye as well. That's better. Let's pour it in. And then we can spread it around a bit using this kebab skewer. And whilst that dries, we can paint the whole of the back part of the base in black. Off camera, I've cut out this piece of clear acrylic sheet into the rough shape of some ooze which will come out of that pipe we made. Over that we'll slap on some UV resin that's got some of that green dye mixed into it as well. And then we'll attach it in place using a little bit of super glue and blend it in with more UV resin. And whilst that all cures, we can add some weathering. And then I think we're just about done here. Well my friends, that brings us to the end of another video, and I just wanted to say, oh, what's that? Got a message here. Oh yeah, from KeyArt. I guess that's a challenge, and just like any guy, I'm not afraid to run away from a challenge, but I also don't know when to quit, so I guess challenge accepted? And that comment from KeyArt was posted onto one of my community polls on YouTube, which just happened to ask, what is your, my viewers, favourite Ninja Turtle? Thankfully Mikey came first, but in close second came Donatello, so I guess that's the next one I'm going to build. If you really like taking part in polls, and I mean, who doesn't? If you want a behind the scenes look at future projects, and even early access to new videos, head over to my Patreon. I'll leave the link in the description. It's also a great way to help me buy supplies so I can make more videos. And I'll love you forever and think about you before I go to sleep. Also like, comment and subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps the channel out. But until we meet again on the great plains of the internet, cheers and have a good one.